Hello mathematicians, let's go ahead and practice finding the percent increase and decrease from one number to another. So for example number 1, I have from 300 to 180. So my supporting information is 300 and 180. Was that an increase or a decrease? Go ahead and circle one of these. Since I started out at 300 and I went down to 180, this was a decrease. Okay? Now we need to start solving what percent that decreased. And there is one proportion that we need to remember for that. My numerator to the top will be the amount that it has changed. The denominator will always be the original amount. And I know that I don't know the percent just yet. That's what I'll be looking for. But I know that all of my percents are out of 100. So I'm going to use this proportion to figure out that part. So the first thing I need to find is the change. I need to figure out how did I go from 300 to 180. And the way that I can do that is by finding the difference. That means that I need to go ahead and subtract. So if I have 300 minus 180, what is the amount of change? My change was 120, so that will be my numerator, 120. My denominator will always be the original amount that I started with. Since I started at 300, that's going to be my denominator. And then the rest of my proportion is x over 100 because I'm looking for a percent. So now we can use our knowledge of proportions to solve the rest of this proportion. I know that I need to find a scale factor that either takes me side to side or that takes me up and down. So I'm trying to get from 120 to x. So I'm going to figure out how I went from 300 to 100. Going from 300 to 100, did I have to multiply or divide? Since it decreased, I did have to divide. And I know that 300 divided by 100 was divided by 3 times. So that's the same exact thing that I'm going to want to do to my numerator. 120 divided by 3 will tell me what percent it decreased. So let's go ahead and do that last piece. I'm going to do 120 divided by 3. What will that equal? 12 can be divided by 3 4 times. And if I bring down this 0, I still have to divide by it. So 0 divided by 3 should give me 0. So that means that my decrease was 40%. That would be our final answer. Let's go ahead and move on to question number 2. We are going from 50 to 92. Was that an increase or a decrease? From 50 to 92, it did go upwards, so that was an increase. So now let's go ahead and start using that same formula that we had. So I'm going to be using the same exact proportion because I'm looking for the percent. So the first thing I need to look for is the amount of change. How much did it change from 50 to 92? Remember that we do that by finding the difference. That means that we are going to be subtracting 92 minus 50. Go ahead and find that change. That change should have been 42, so that is our numerator. Our denominator is going to be the original amount, what it started with. Since it went from 50 to 92, that means 50 was our original amount. And then I know that I can start finding the percent for this change. Again, I can either go up and down or I can go side to side. So let's find a scale factor that'll help us out here. If I go from 50 to 100, because I'm trying to go from 42 to x, I know that I can do that by multiplying by 2. So that's the same exact thing that I'm going to be doing to my numerators. So that means that I'm going to be doing 42 times 2. Go ahead and give me that percent. 2 times 2 is 4, and 2 times 4 is 8. So that means that this increased 84%. For example number 3, I have going from 140 to 35. Was this an increase or a decrease? Go ahead and circle that. Since I was going from 140 to 35, that went down. That means it was a decrease. And again, I'm going to be using the same exact proportion that I did for the other ones because I don't know my percent this time. Alrighty, so if I'm going from 140 to 35, the first thing I need to look for is the amount that it has changed. So what operation am I going to be doing? That's right. Since I'm looking for the change, I'm going to be subtracting those. So go ahead and figure out what is the change for this problem. $105 should have been your change, so that's my numerator. The denominator will be the original amount. Which one was the original amount, 140 or 35? Since this problem started out from 140, that is the original amount. And then I can finish off my proportion, so I can go ahead and start solving that. Now looking here, I'm trying to either go up and down or side to side. Right now I can tell it's not going to be a whole number. I'm going to go ahead and just pick this way, side to side. How do I go from 105 to x? And I need to find my scale factor from here. Since I don't know what 140 multiplied or divided by can get me to 100, I'm going to be working backwards. So I'm going to be dividing to solve that scale factor. I have 140 and I'm going to divide that by 100. Go ahead and start dividing that. Let's see what you get. 1 cannot be divided by 100. Neither can 14. However, 140 can. 140 can divide out one time by 100. That leaves me with 40, but because we are 7th graders, we know that that's not the end of it. Now I need to add a decimal, and I can bring down a 0. 400 divided by 100 gives me 4. And so now I am left with 0, which is awesome. That's exactly what I wanted. From 140 to 100, it decreased. So that means we divided by our scale factor of 1.4. So that means to get my numerator, to figure out my x, my percent change, I'm going to have to do the same thing. I'm going to have to do 105 divided by 1.5. 1.4, I mean. So let's go ahead and start doing that. I have 105 divided by 1.4. Go ahead and start dividing that. Let's see what you get. Since I have a decimal, I am going to be moving it over one spot so that we can have a whole number. That means I'm going to do the same thing over here. Since 105 was a whole number, I know the decimal is in the back, so I'm going to be moving it right here. Okay, and now we can start dividing. 1 cannot be divided by 14. 10 cannot be divided by 14. But 105 can be. How many times can 105 be divided by 1.4? 105 can be divided by 14 7 times. Because 7 times 14 gives us 98. What is 105 minus 98? That would give us 7, but we still have this extra 0 over here, so let's go ahead and continue dividing. How many times can 70 be divided by 14? That will be 5 times, and that equals 70. So now we are left with nothing. That means that this is our percent decrease. From 140 to 35%, it decreased 75%. Alrighty, let's move on to our last example. For our last example, again, we are going to be using the same proportion because I do not know the percent. I am looking for the percent. So I'm going from 500 to 645. Was that an increase or a decrease? Since that went up, it was an increase. First step is finding out how much it changed. How much did it increase? So what operation will you have to do for that? Since I'm talking about change, I'm finding the difference. So I'm going to need to subtract 645 minus 500 gives you what? The amount of change should have been 145. That's our numerator. Our denominator is the original amount. What was the original amount for this problem? That's correct. We started out with 500. I don't know my percent yet, but I know that percents are out of 100. So again, I can start looking for a scale factor, either going up and down or side to side. For this one, I can see that from 500 to 100 can be a pretty easy scale factor. Would I need to multiply or divide for this scale factor? Since it went from 500 to 100, it decreased, which means that I needed to divide. And 500 divided by 100 is how many times? It's divisible 5 times. So I'm going to do the same exact thing to my numerator. 145 divided by 5 will give me the percent that I'm looking for. So let's go ahead and start that division. 145 divided by 5 equals what? 1 cannot be divided by 5. 14 can be divided 2 times by 5. And 45 can be divided by 5 9 times. So that means that 29 is our percent that it increased. So to go from 500 to 645, it needed to increase 29%.